The calculations that we've worked with so far have been on a record basis, and that is there's been a calculated result per record. What I now would like to show you is the group by or totals function, which is not per record but actually by groups of records. Let's start first of all by creating a new query, a new select query. I'm going to go to the Create tab in the ribbon, and in the Queries group I'll click the button Query Design. The tables I'd like to add are TBL student, so I'll click TBL student and I'll click Add. I'll click TBL student in class and Add, and I'll also click TBL class and Add. And then I'll close the Show Table dialog box. If I ever need to bring it back, I've got this button here, Show Table, which I can easily click and add any further tables should I need them, but I'll just close it. What I can then do is resize my particular tables so I can see all the fields I have to work with. Now the sorts of fields I'd like to add first of all is from the TBL class table I'd like to add class name. And then I'd like to get right into a calculation. I have the name of a class and now I want to calculate total revenue. So I'm going to call this column total revenue and then a colon. I'm going to grab the cost field in square brackets and close square brackets and multiply it by 1.15. Let me just expand this so you can see more clearly. So this column called total revenue is going to grab the cost of each class and multiply it by 1.15, which includes the GST. Now to the right of this, I'm actually going to add another field, but I'm just thinking before I do that, let's just view what we've done so far, just so that you're clear about what we've got. So I'm going to hit the View button to the left of my ribbon. Here's a list of my class names, a lot of duplicity, and here's the total revenue. And in fact, let's format the total revenue to currency in 2 decimal places. So I'll go back to the Design view by hitting the View button. I'll click on Total Revenue, and using my Properties sheet, I'll apply the format currency and set the decimal places to 2. And I'll just view that result. That's better. So we've got total revenue showing as currency in 2 decimal places. Now what I'd like to do in the Design view is add a third field, and I'd like to name it number of students. And then a colon, and then I'm just going to refer to the field student ID in square brackets, square bracket, student ID, and there's no space in the field student ID, close bracket. Let me just stretch that out so you can see more clearly. Oops. And let's just view the result. When I go to View, I simply have the student ID showing in this last column. Now if I go back to View, what I'd then like to do is group this. The reason I want to group it, actually let me just take you back to View, is I don't want to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 instances of great works and 5 instances of thermodynamic theory. I actually want to see 1 instance and the total revenue summed up and the number of students counted. So I can see how many students have enrolled in that class and therefore how much revenue that class has generated. So that's the reason for the totals button, or group by. So I'm going back to the design view of my query and I'm looking up in my ribbon for this button here called totals. When I click this button totals, you'll see an extra row appears in your grid. So I'll click totals. And there it is there. There's the total row under the table row. If I click the button again, it disappears. And if I click it again, it reappears. Now what I'd like to do here is group by class name, but sum the total revenue. So I'm going to change this instance of group by to sum. And notice there are a lot of functions available, such as average, find the minimum, find the maximum, find the standard deviation, find the first one or the last one. But I'm going to sum the total revenue. And when it comes to the number of students, I want to change group by to count. So it counts the number of students. And let's have a look at the results now. When I view my query by hitting the View bar to the far left of the ribbon, I now have a single instance of each class name because I've grouped by this. I now have the sum of the total revenue, and I now have a count of the number of students in each class. I'd like to save this query, so I'm going to hit the Save button on my Quick Access toolbar, and I'll call this query QRY class totals, and I'll click OK. So the Group By or the Totals button is very handy when you want to group a whole lot of very similar records together and sum and count and average some data. So I'll just close this query.